G'day, F1's faced with some logistical nightmares getting crew here for the first race of the season, given the disruption to air services out of the Middle East. It's happened before, and it's always been solved. Is that going to be the case this race? Formula One needs about 2,000 people. Most of those people come from the UK and Europe. So when you get the likes of Qatar Airways, Emirates and Etihad unable to fly, yes, it does create a real drama. Will this race go ahead? No doubt. In fact, we had the CEO of the organisation running the event chat yesterday and confirm it is going ahead. And I've been through the paddock today and I can tell you most of the teams are fine. Yes, a lot of the crew had long journeys and at the moment I'm hearing 60 hours was the longest. That was one of the Williams crew. They were on a Qatar flight, but once they were over Belgium, that flight was turned around. They disembarked, grabbed their luggage, and by that time, the travel people had swung quickly into action and found them flights. But some went via Singapore, some went via LA, and other teams I've spoken to today said they've had people going all around the world, and 45 to 50 hours was not uncommon. Obviously, there's been a huge extra cost because those flights at the last minute aren't cheap. What I'm hearing now is a lot of fans haven't been able to make it, had to cancel their plans, and that's resulting in hotels and tickets becoming free. Not free giveaway, but available. And I'm seeing a lot of posts on my page saying, hey, we've got tickets for sale, we don't need this hotel room anymore. Whilst most of the teams have most of their crew here, Ferrari is still waiting on a number of mechanics and engineers. They have been delayed, I believe, in the Middle East. I'll stand corrected on that, but that's what I understand from today. There's no guarantee when they will be here, but I'm hearing that the curfew, which would normally kick in, I think it's on Wednesday night, may be extended because this is an extraordinary circumstance. And that's not unusual for F1 to do that. What I should say, though, is that had this have happened 3 or 4 days later, it would have been a real inconvenience, and I doubt they would have got all their crew here in time. When it comes to F1 drivers, there are 2 drivers that weren't affected at all by this. Valtteri Bottas, who was in South Australia, who was actually at a motoring event on the weekend, and Oscar Piastri, who is in Australia too prior to this race. And there'll be no doubt that the other drivers will make it here on time. I talked to one team member who said that their travel managers were both on flights to Australia when all this happened. So they spent the entire flight organising rescheduling of their crew to go via various ports. And going back to the Williams crew, when they stepped off their flights, they'd already received details of their new flight. Now, if you fly into Melbourne in the next day or so, you will notice that there are a number of Qatar, Emirates and Etihad aircraft sitting idle on the tarmac at Melbourne Airport. Obviously, they can't go anywhere, but when they do, I imagine the airlines will be in contact with all those passengers who are stranded, and they will be sorting that out pretty quickly. And the reports I'm seeing out of the UAE in particular is that those airlines are doing a fantastic job in looking after those passengers who are stranded. Let's talk now about the crews that were in Bahrain for the wet weather testing. First up, you're probably thinking, why are they testing for wet weather in Bahrain? It's in the desert. Well, Bahrain has invested in a sprinkler system that would allow them to wet the track, run the wet tyres, and the Pirelli would get data. But it's not the full track. They do a shortened version of the track. That was all set up. They never ran a lap on that. And yesterday, the Mercedes and the McLaren crew were holed up in their hotel, waiting for advice. Now today, I believe they've travelled to Daman, which is just across the border in Saudi. They've then taken a flight to, and I'll stand corrected, but I think it's either Jeddah or Riyadh, and then they're flying home to the UK. Now, most of those crew weren't expected to come here, but there were a handful. But they have gone back to England, and the teams have sent replacement crew from England to Melbourne. Now, I'll be keen to see whether or not one F1 driver, well, a reserve driver, Frederik Vesti, who is a reserve driver for Mercedes, turns up in Melbourne this weekend. He was scheduled to do that wet weather testing in Bahrain. I'm not sure if he's got out, and if he has he gone back to Europe or the UK and then will come out to Australia? But that'll be an interesting thing to see. And the other thing in terms of drivers this weekend is Colton Herta. He's taking part in his first F2 event. I think there'll be great interest in that race to see how he handles this new form of racing. He, of course, was an IndyCar driver. He's come over because he's eyeing a seat with Cadillac next year perhaps, and at present he's about 5 super license points short of getting his super license. So US fans, not only have you got Haas and Cadillac to keep you interested, check out F2 to see if your boy does well there. Coming up next, we go to China, and then there's a week off, and then we go to Japan. Those races will be going ahead, no doubt. There is obviously concern about the Bahrain and Saudi races, because at the moment a lot of governments have do not travel warnings for both of those countries because of the events there. I imagine those warnings will have to be lifted. Certainly there would be an insurance implication for, I guess, fans and crew heading to a place where there is a do not travel warning. I also imagine that Formula One will be looking at perhaps replacement races if that's not going ahead. But it's too early to tell. That is 6 weeks away. But what I can tell you is if those races don't go ahead, all of the teams, I'm pretty sure this is right, all of the teams have their garages set up in Bahrain. They've also got another setup for Jeddah in Bahrain, and perhaps some of that's already made the trip to Jeddah in preparation for that Saudi race. If those races don't go ahead, the teams are then going to have to get all of that garage set up back to the UK or onto another race that would leapfrog to. What is disappointing is that Qatar and Etihad are both sponsors of Formula One. Well, Qatar with F1 and Etihad now with McLaren. And they would have loved to have had their aircraft flying in here, bringing their major clients to Melbourne for the event. Now at the moment, and I'm recording this at 1 p.m. Melbourne time, today being the 3rd of March, those flights aren't coming in. And last night out at the airport, we were just seeing cancellation after cancellation remarks on the incoming flight boards. Hopefully that clears and those flights will be able to make it. I did see some limited movement out of Abu Dhabi, but I think they are mainly to rescue folks caught in Abu Dhabi and send them back to their home ports. Well, most of the people I spoke to today said that their crew had gone commercial flights via Singapore, KL, LA, New York, etc. I did hear of one that got a charter. It was a BA flight. I'm not sure of the routing, but it was quickly organised and obviously diverted around that dicey area in the Middle East. If you were concerned that this race may not go ahead, put that out of your mind. It's definitely going ahead. Will Aston Martin run the whole race? I've seen a couple of posts today indicating that they may only do a couple of laps. And I thought, why would you even start if you can only do a couple of laps? What I understand is that as part of the Concord Agreement, and that's all the teams sign that, you have to compete in each race. Their limited running in Bahrain testing and in Barcelona meant that they have very little idea of how that car and engine is going to handle, react on track. They may not feel comfortable testing it in a full race. So I, like you, will be very keen to see whether or not they actually do more than a couple of laps. Now you'll notice that the paddock looks markedly different from last year. We have no grass visible. Now it's, except down the end, there's some grass at the end in front of Cadillac. But in general, it's AstroTurf and these lovely squares. But you'll notice that there's no big trees. What's going on there? Why did they chop them down? That's all to do with the new pit building, because after this race, that one will be torn down and a brand new mega pit building will be put up. Now this race, we are a very real chance of seeing the world's fastest pit stop record broken. At the moment it stands at 1.8 seconds. Lando Norris in Qatar, in fact I shot his first pit stop of that race going back a couple of years ago, not the second one, which was the world record. Now the reason those pit stops will be faster is because the cars are smaller, they're lighter, and the wheels and tyres are also lighter by kilograms. One team has been putting in some solid practice back in their headquarters and they've broken that record a couple of times. Now breaking that record could be hampered by the fact that an engineer has to go and change the angle of the front wing during a pit stop. In the past it was in a much more convenient location. Now that crew member has to lean in a lot further. So that person's efforts may well determine whether or not that record is broken. Of course, this weekend there's great uncertainty as to who's going to be fast and who's not going to be fast. There's even uncertainty about which race we're attending, because if you look at this signage at the front, this is last year's. I have no doubt, though, that come race day, that will be fixed, and I'll be looking out for that for you. Now, before you go, could you please hit the like button? And remember, if you're a fan of my travel videos, I've moved them over to a separate channel. There's a link in the description below. I'd love to have your company there. And for a whole lot of extra content, take a look up here. Thanks for watching.
And stay passionate.
Okay, just wait, look at me and just talk.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6, 7, 6, 7, 6, 7.